want to know what room you want open.
Why the conversion to Islam?
Well, as I said, conversion isn't quite the word because that implies you were something else before.
Absolutely. Oh no, it's not this way, is it? I beg your pardon. Sorry, it's this way.
What I've learned about myself in 2 rather difficult years is that I have a thirst for that other thing called God.
Yep. How scared are you that somebody will come out and kill you with a gun?
Well, I mean, I guess I have to be aware that there's a possibility of that, you know, but I'm not going to allow that to shape my actions.
Because it is brand new and everybody here is getting housing. What's this? Where's that? Oh no, it's not this way, is it? I beg your pardon. Sorry, it's this way.
Come further back. Just a whack down your top.
What part
This is obviously a policy discussion.
do it sometime.
Dr. Simon. Go ahead, Tom. I want to know what room you want open. I believe it was 242.
Right. Just like have a seat. Would you like some coffee? Would you or water? Which would you prefer? What about you, gentlemen? Would you like some coffee or some water?
Do come in, gentlemen, please.
Come in and sit down. The camera's the other side of you, so you're all right.
If there's any possibility of having a look at the Times, which I haven't seen today, I think they've got.
Yes, I can get you one.
Yeah, they have. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I'll fish one out for you.
Hmm.
We're pretty much in chaos at the moment.
Yes, looks very impressive.
Well, yeah, we're trying to find our way around. That's the most difficult job we've got at the
Well,
moment.
it's a bit different from the other place, let's say.
Yeah,
Did you go to Wells Street? Have you ever been to Wells
I
Street?
went to Wells Street a few times, yeah. I mean, you know, not in the last 2 years.
No.
But it was a pretty sad place by the time we left it. I'll tell you. I mean, we just had, A, we'd outgrown it, and B, it was rather tatty and a little bit dishevelled.
Yeah.
Very cramped, but you know.
Page 3.
Do you have sugar?
I'll have one of those sweetened loaves.
Anybody want a biscuit, Jones?
No, you wasn't. That's what I've got.
It's not general first yet,
No, tomorrow. Diet starts tomorrow.
Who has sugar? Anybody? Do you mind if we put a radio mic on you?
No, that's fine.
You're all right, Richard?
Everybody got coffee?
Yep.
That's all right, so that's all right.
Yes.
Joan, can I just pull you just slightly under the lens a little? That's I'm happy whenever everybody else is. It was going brilliantly.
Never mind. Oh,
Sorry about that, Simon.
can't remember what I asked you now.
No, I can't remember what I said.
Paperback. Start on the paperback.
Try and be more concise.
It's hard to be concise in subjects as with as many ramifications as this
That's
has.
the trouble, you know, one can't reduce it to slogans.
We're running in, carry on.
Okay. Salman Rushdie, can you just clarify the position on the paperback edition of the Satanic Verses? What is actually happening there?
Oh, what I've said is very straightforward, is that I won't permit more translations or an English language paperback while any risk of further offence exists. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that's the time that's as long as it needs to be, because what I wanted to do was to create a space in which we could, in which there could be time for understanding. And now, however long that takes, however long it takes for people to come to understand that this book was not written as an insult, and in fact is not an insult to any religion, I want to give it that time.
But that time may never come. I mean, you don't see it as an insult, but there are many people that do.
No, I mean, what I've said and what many of the people I've been talking to have agreed is that the book was misunderstood, that it's a kind of tragic misunderstanding, and a lot of explanation needs to be done. However, I've also, of course, accepted that for many people, or for some people anyway, there's been a reading of the book which was upsetting. And I've repeatedly apologized for that, because clearly if you don't want to upset people, and you do, you say you're sorry. What I've been trying to say is that there are other readings of the book in which the book, in fact, is, in my mind, my most spiritual novel, in which the story of Jibreel, around which all the fuss has happened, is the story of a man losing his mind precisely because he loses his faith, which is a parable about the importance of faith in his life, and that, after all the so-called insults take place in the dreams of a madman. And to put it simply, I mean, what that says is that you've got to be mad to think like that. So that's not what it seems to me to be, an anti-religious book. But that's why I think it's important the book stays in print so that people can come to understand it. But I don't want to do anything which upsets people more while sensitivities are so great.
But you're talking about your own life here, your own life being at stake. Why not just put the lid on the whole thing and forget that, not forget its existence, but certainly not allow it to be pursued with a paperback edition at some time in the distant future? Well,
I mean, I have effectively put the lid on the paperback. I mean, in the real world, that's what I've done. But what I've said is that I'm not going to do this, you know, for all time to come. I mean, life is very long, and the life of a book is even longer, and people's attitudes change, societies change, all sorts of things change. I don't want to give a blanket, I don't want to mortgage the future. I mean, all I've said is that while things are as they are, there won't be a paperback. If things should change, there might be. But, you know, that could be 100 years away, 300 years away, who knows?
Why the conversion to Islam?
Well, as I said, conversion isn't quite the word, because that implies you were something else before. Whereas what I've been doing is to, by very slow and really difficult to talk about on television processes of thought, been moving closer and closer to a position in which I can affirm the basis of Islam. I mean, I haven't changed overnight, is what I'm trying to say. All my books have seriously engaged with religion. Nobody who's been that interested in religion for that long is that far away from it. I mean, I have a view which is, I mean, I've been reading a lot of Dostoevsky recently, and he talks about how in him there was, in his time when he came very close to a firing squad and was then in jail, he discovered that he was thirsting for faith, as he says, like parched earth, and found it because truth shines in misfortune. However, he said, he was also continued to be a child of his time, which was a time of doubt and skepticism, and that impulse was very strong in him and contradictory, of course. Now, I feel in myself both those. I've always felt myself to be a child of an age of doubt and skepticism, and I continue to think that about myself. But what I've learned about myself in 2 rather difficult years is that I have a thirst for that other thing called God. And that thing is inside me and will be there now for the rest of my life. I don't see it as a diminishing of my possibilities as a human being. I see it as an increase.
But why the Islamic faith as against all the others that are open to you?
Oh, because for me it would have to be Islam. I mean, because by family background, by culture, by nationality, by history, I mean, that's the faith which I know about and which I've felt interested in, and that's been the one that's always been in my work. And I mean, of course, you know, when one espouses a religion, one doesn't espouse its worst excesses. I mean, the Islam that I know about has to do with my family, with my friends, with my grandparents, etc., who were all extremely loving, tolerant, gentle, broad-minded people. That tradition is very important in Islam, and certainly that would be the Islamic tradition that I see myself as belonging to. I mean, you know, somebody who's a Christian doesn't necessarily endorse the Inquisition.
What about those who say that you've embraced the Islamic faith simply to save your own skin?
Well, I mean, let them say it. You know, frankly, it's a matter for my conscience, and my conscience feels fine. It seems to me sometimes that I've been stuck between one group of people who think that any step I might make is somehow wrong and a betrayal, and other people who think that any step I might make is insufficient. Now, what I'm doing is simply taking the steps that I believe to be right. And if anybody thinks they could do better, I'd very happily change places with them.
You're saying, in a sense, that nothing that you can do is the right thing.
Well, I think there's always going to be somebody who's... I mean, I've been hit from all sorts of directions in the last 2 years. I've been accused of every conceivable kind of perfidy and lack of integrity and betrayal and so forth. And I've simply had to find my own way in the middle of a storm in which, rather oddly, it seems as if the victim has been made responsible for the crime.
What are your views of the recent overtures from Egypt?
Well, I think it's the most important thing, and this is really what I wanted to stress most today, is that after months in which I've been trying to hold out a hand of friendship and explain to people that I'm not an enemy of Islam, and in many ways have been for many years an ally of the rights of Muslims in Kashmir or Palestine or here, what's happened is somebody has taken that hand and clasped it, and the somebody who has done so is no less than the supreme religious authority of the Sunni Muslim world. That's the Grand Sheikh of Al-Azhar in Cairo, who is the ultimate authority for 90% of the world's Muslims. And what he has done is to give me his blessing and to say, if I may paraphrase, that the past should be considered, so to speak, a closed book. So now we're in a position, here we are on New Year's Eve, it's a new year, we are being told by the supreme religious authority that this matter is dealt with, you know, that I have his blessing, that he welcomes me into the faith, and that everything that's happened before is finished with. Now, what I hope, and I believe, is that for most Muslims in the world, they will go with that, because he is the ultimate figure to respect, I mean, a much greater Islamic scholar than certainly anyone existing in this country. And I would hope that all British Muslims would now acquiesce in that and to say, yes, you know, the peace has been made and we should go forward into the new year as friends.
Except your recent overtures have been rejected by Iran, of course.
That's true. I mean, I can't speak for the government of Iran, but what I do know, and what the Iranian government has said frequently during the course of recent months, is that they too have a great respect for the authority of the Sheikh of Al-Azhar over the Sunni Muslim world. Well, I'm a Sunni Muslim. And this is the ultimate authority of Sunni Islam. So I would hope now that even the government of Iran might feel able to reconsider.
Why have you suddenly started to come out, appearing on television? We hear you on the radio. What's happened to bring you to this point?
Well, I mean, I suppose I've believed from the very beginning of this. I mean, it might not seem it from the outside, but I mean, I've been pushing against the gates from the beginning, and I've wanted, whenever it seemed sensible, to reclaim parts of my life, to begin to do so. And that's what I slowly have begun to do and will continue to do. Also, I've been holding out olive branches, you know, all year, more or less, in one way or another, and I've been waiting for somebody to start taking them. And when it happened that Muslim scholars began to wish to talk to me in a positive and open-minded spirit, and we were able to reach agreement, I then thought, well, I've got to continue that process. If people have begun to listen, if the reconciliation has begun, I've got to do as much as I possibly can to push it onwards, and that's what I'm doing.
How much are you pushing back the barriers from complete incarceration as it was at the beginning of '88? I
mean, step by step, you know. I'm not going to give you a list of things I've got planned, but it's a little easier, let's say.
Well, can you give me a few examples of things you're perhaps able to do now that you couldn't do before?
Well, I can go into the odd bookshop and sign books sometimes. I mean, people notice that I went to one, but actually that day I went to 3. So it was, I mean, just being able to do simple things like that is very pleasant. And I mean, I'm not going to give you any more details, because I think until I find out how to do something and how it's safe to do it, I think it'd be silly to say so.
What's been the worst part for you over the past couple of years?
There's no doubt that the worst part of the last couple of years has been that my son has been obliged to be without a father for 2 years. And I have a great responsibility there, and it seems to me that I have to do something about that. And I'm sure that, you know, most Muslims in this country would understand that there is an innocent victim in this, and that it's time that, you know, that he was allowed to have a father.
Have you seen your son?
It's very difficult for me, I mean, because that's the hardest thing.
What sort of response have you had from the British government?
None, really, in a word. I mean, I've had very vestigial contact with the government over the last couple of years, and what I hope now, Because what I'm trying to do is to put these 2 years behind me. I mean, I could make all sorts of complaints and so forth. It's not valuable to do so.
Thornley, please go to press office as soon as possible.
I'll ask you that question again.
A railway station.
Given them
First take.
Could you, as you pass reception, tell them not to use that tannoy again, please?
Keep them quiet out there as well.
We're running.
What contacts have you had with the British government?
Oh, minimal, really. I mean, they don't seem to want to have much to do with me. But I mean, what I'm trying to do is not to make a great complaint about things that have or have not happened over the last 2 years, because I think we may be on the threshold of a more positive moment in this terrible crisis. And what I'd simply like to do is to ask the British government to welcome it. I mean, I've done this more or less by myself so far, and this, after all, has been a political crisis, whatever else it's been. And I could do with some help. I'd like the British government to say that they are happy about what's happened between me and Muslim scholars here and with the Sheikh of Al-Azhar. And they have diplomatic processes at their disposal. I would hope they would use them. I would hope the Labour Party would come out and help as well.
Have you tried asking the British government?
I've asked them, I mean, publicly like this, but I mean, I have no contact with government ministers who don't seem to want much.
Have you tried to contact government ministers and talk to them on a one-to-one level?
Not recently, no.
Is that something that you feel should happen or shouldn't happen, or?
As I say, I mean, I don't want to prescribe what should or shouldn't happen. What I'm saying is that I think there's a really strong positive movement now, and I would hope that all political parties, government, opposition, would welcome it and would do what they can. I hope that they will.
What do you think will happen in 1991?
I'm not a prophet. I'm happy to get through the days.
But what would you like to see happening to you? How do you see the next few months panning out?
Well, I just think that this process that's begun has to continue, and it has to be given time. I mean, the statement from Al-Azhar, the agreement with the British Muslim scholars, that has to allow time to filter out into the community. And I want to find ways of reaching out into the Muslim community, talking to them more, explaining the situation to them more, and just continuing the process of peace, and at the same time reclaiming what I can of my ordinary life.
How scared are you that somebody will? How scared are you that somebody will come out and kill you with a gun?
Well, I mean, I guess I have to be aware that there's a possibility of that, you know, but I'm not going to allow that to shape my actions.
Lovely. Right. Quick two-shot.
Richard, you just pull that line.
Sorry about all those interruptions and having to redo the first part of the
Does
interview
it
again.
sound as all right the second time?
No, it sounded fine actually.
Yeah?
It sounded absolutely fine.
That was, I don't know how much we did there, but presumably you have to chop that down too.
I'll chop that down, yes.
Okay, Jane, if you could just look.